The U.S. is deploying around 1,000 troops from the 82 Airborne Division to the Middle East in the coming days. The deployment includes a battalion of the 1 Brigade Combat Team in Maj. Gen. Brandon Tegmeyer, the division's commander. The 82 Airborne is known for rapid response capabilities and can deploy on short notice. This adds to the ongoing U.S. military presence in the region. This deployment follows recent announcements of Marine units heading to the Middle East. The exact location within the Middle East has not been confirmed. However, the timing suggests a coordinated response to regional security concerns and potential threats. The U.S. military presence in the Middle East continues to evolve, with this latest move reinforcing the country's strategic focus in the region. The significance of the 82 Airborne Division's capabilities underscores the need for rapid and flexible military responses to emerging challenges. Israel and Iran exchanged military strikes on Tuesday, with Israel targeting Tehran and Beirut while Iran launched missiles and drones across the Middle East. The U.S. continues to support Israel militarily, with President Donald Trump calling for diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. Over 82,000 civilian units have been damaged or destroyed in the conflict, affecting multiple countries. Israel has also targeted Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon, displacing over 1 million people. Civilian casualties and displacement have significantly increased, highlighting the urgent need for diplomatic solutions to de-escalate the ongoing military engagements. The conflict's continued escalation raises serious concerns for regional stability and the safety of civilians caught in the crossfire. With no immediate end in sight, the international community watches closely for signs of progress towards peace. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, has identified multiple failures contributing to a fatal collision at LaGuardia Airport involving an Air Canada jet and a fire truck. The incident occurred Sunday night, March 24, 2026, resulting in fatalities and injuries. According to the NTSB, the runway warning system did not activate as expected. Additionally, the fire truck, lacking a transponder for radar identification, was given clearance to cross the runway shortly before the collision. NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy emphasized concerns over the understaffed air traffic control operations during the night shift, noting that only 2 controllers were managing duties typically handled by 4. The investigation highlights broader issues within the air traffic control system, including staffing levels and operational pressures. Standard operating procedures for the night shift often involve 2 controllers handling the workload of 4 positions. This raises questions about safety protocols and oversight. As the NTSB continues its investigation, the focus remains on understanding the full scope of system failures and identifying measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. Leading cultural and architectural preservation organizations have asked a federal court to halt the Trump administration's Kennedy Center reconstruction project. This legal challenge is part of broader opposition to President Trump's vision to reshape Washington, D.C. This includes plans for a 250-foot arch near Arlington National Cemetery. Since October 2025, legal challenges have mounted over the scale and impact of these projects. Preservation groups argued that the proposed changes not only violate legal protocols but also undermine the city's historical and cultural significance. For instance, the Kennedy Center's renaming and renovation are contested, raising questions about the balance of power in federal governance. Critics, including architects and preservationists, contend that Trump's reshaping of advisory panels like the Commission of Fine Arts and the National Capital Planning Commission raises concerns about executive overreach and the impartiality of expert review processes. The President's executive order in August 2025 declaring classical architecture as the default style for federal public buildings further inflames these debates. Meanwhile, some supporters see these initiatives as a return to traditional aesthetics. Opponents argue that the scale and location of proposed landmarks like the 250-foot arch near Arlington National Cemetery are inappropriate and historically inaccurate. The arch, for example, would dwarf iconic D.C. landmarks like the Lincoln and Jefferson memorials, altering the city's visual identity. The unresolved legal battles and public opposition highlight the tension between presidential authority and the preservation of Washington, D.C.'s cultural and historical integrity. As these challenges continue, the fate of President Trump's architectural projects remains uncertain. President Trump has outlined 5 objectives for the U.S. to achieve before ending its war with Iran, now entering its 4th week. These objectives include significantly degrading Iran's missile capability, destroying its defense industrial base, eliminating its naval and air forces, preventing Iran from gaining nuclear capabilities, protecting U.S. allies in the Middle East. Despite the ongoing strikes, some objectives remain unfulfilled. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth claims Iran's missile and drone programs are overwhelmingly destroyed, but Iran continues to launch attacks. Additionally, over 140 Iranian vessels have been damaged or destroyed, though Iran's naval capabilities are still operational. The campaign's objectives have evolved since the conflict began on February 28, 2026. Initially, the goals were less defined, but now they are more specific and complex. However, uncertainty remains about the extent of Iran's military capabilities and the potential consequences if these objectives are not fully met. With ongoing negotiations and the global economy strained, the U.S. faces the challenge of balancing military success with political and economic stability in the region. The unresolved nature of these objectives raises questions about the war's future and its impact on both nations. Minnesota officials have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, seeking access to evidence related to 3 shootings by federal officers. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty says the lawsuit targets the federal government's refusal to cooperate with state investigations into the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, as well as the wounding of Julio Cesar Sosa Celius. The lawsuit claims the federal government has a policy of withholding evidence from state inquiries, particularly in high-profile cases. This stance has led to public outcry and protests, with many questioning the federal government's commitment to transparency and accountability. The Department of Homeland Security sent thousands of officers to Minneapolis and St. Paul as part of President Trump's national deportation campaign, an operation that has faced significant criticism from Minnesota's leaders. Federal officials argue that state authorities do not have jurisdiction to investigate shootings involving federal officers. However, state officials assert that independent investigations are necessary to ensure proper oversight and justice. The Trump administration's refusal to cooperate has further complicated the legal and political landscape. This raises questions about the balance of power between state and federal authorities in matters of law enforcement oversight. The outcome of this legal battle could set a precedent for state oversight of federal law enforcement activities, impacting how similar incidents are handled in the future. With ongoing public concern and legal scrutiny, the resolution of this lawsuit will be closely watched for its implications on transparency and accountability in law enforcement operations. The Pentagon has announced it will remove media offices from its building following a federal judge's ruling in favor of the New York Times in a lawsuit challenging restrictive press access policies. 7 Times journalists will have their press credentials reinstated, but details on the relocation and timing remain unclear. Department spokesperson Sean Parnell stated journalists will eventually be able to work from an annex outside the Pentagon building. The Pentagon Press Association criticized this decision, calling it a violation of press freedoms and emphasizing the importance of unrestricted access to information. The case centers on the Pentagon's new credentialing policy, which journalists argue violates their constitutional rights to free speech and due process. The policy shift follows a trend of press restrictions under President Donald Trump's administration, which favored certain media outlets over others. The Pentagon disagrees with the ruling and is pursuing an appeal. This decision has significant implications for press freedom and First Amendment rights, setting a precedent for government media relations. President Donald Trump disclosed Tuesday that he received an unspecified gift from Iran, calling it valuable and related to oil and gas negotiations. The president made the statement during a press briefing at the Oval Office, however, did not provide any further details about the gift's nature or value. Trump's announcement comes amid ongoing diplomatic talks between the U.S. and Iran, particularly regarding energy deals. The gift's connection to oil and gas implies a potential break, through negotiations, though specifics remain undisclosed. Pressed for more information, the president declined to reveal the exact contents of the gift, emphasizing its significance without elaborating further. This cryptic statement adds a layer of intrigue to the ongoing dialogue between the two nations. The immediate significance of the gift and its implications for U.S.-Iran relations remain unclear, as Trump did not offer additional context or next steps in the diplomatic process. President Donald Trump announced today that U.S. officials, including his son-in-law Jared Kushner and envoy Steve Witkoff, are in talks with Iran to end the ongoing conflict. However, Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf, denied any high-level negotiations and accused Trump of market manipulation. The U.S. and Iran have been at war for 4 weeks, escalating tensions globally. Trump's statement marks a strategic shift from planned military action to diplomatic engagement. He initially postponed plans to bomb Iran's power plants, citing positive early talks. Kalibaf's denial underscores the contentious nature of U.S.-Iran relations. Iran's stance reflects geopolitical pressures and economic concerns, aiming to stabilize financial markets amidst the conflict. The conflicting claims highlight the uncertain and complex state of negotiations between the two nations, with both sides framing the situation to their advantage. The immediate next steps and the fate of the talks remain unclear. The Federal Reserve is reconsidering its plans for interest rate cuts this year, citing worsening inflation. Since the start of the Iran war in February, long-term interest rates have climbed, with the 10-year Treasury yield rising from 4% to nearly 4.4%. Economists and Wall Street investors now see a significant chance of a rate hike by October, up from 0 just a week ago. Krishna Gua from Evercore ISI states, "We think cuts are delayed, not derailed." The current economic backdrop is uncertain, with inflation measures expected to rise further in the coming months. Higher interest rates are impacting borrowing costs for both consumers and businesses. As of now, 30-year fixed-rate mortgages are averaging 6.22%, up from below 6% before the conflict began. This rise in borrowing costs may slow economic growth and affect consumer spending. The Federal Reserve's decision on interest rates will depend on how inflation and unemployment rates evolve. If inflation continues to rise while unemployment remains stable, the Fed may opt for rate increases to combat inflation, rather than reductions to stimulate the economy. With the economic situation evolving, the immediate next step is for the Federal Reserve to closely monitor inflation trends and adjust rates accordingly to manage both economic growth and inflation. Russia launched a massive drone and missile attack on Ukraine overnight, firing nearly 400 drones and causing civilian casualties. The strikes hit at least 7 cities, including the capital Kyiv, and injured over 40 people. Ukrainian officials report ongoing Russian attempts to break through frontline defenses, with intense fighting reported along the entire contact line. The attack, which came as spring weather improves, signals a potential new offensive phase. Russian troops made simultaneous breakthrough attempts in several strategic areas, intensifying efforts on a roughly 1,250-kilometer front line. According to Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, at least 10 locations across Ukraine were hit by missiles, with significant damage reported in central cities like Dnipro and Ivano-Frankivsk, where maternity hospitals and apartment buildings were damaged. This marks a significant escalation in Russia's offensive, 4 years after the start of the full-scale invasion. Conflict has seen periodic escalations, with winter typically slowing ground operations. However, with spring weather improving, this attack could be the beginning of a major spring-summer offensive, according to some analysts. The international community continues to grapple with the Iran war, diverting attention from the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. As the situation evolves, both sides are bracing for potential further attacks and countermeasures. A ship carrying humanitarian aid arrived in Havana today as Cuba faces deepening economic and energy crises. The vessel, part of the Our America convoy to Cuba, includes solar panels, bicycles, food, medicine to help the island cope with severe blackouts and a crumbling power grid. The ship, named Granma 2.0 in homage to the boat that brought revolutionary leader Fidel Castro to Cuba, is part of a flotilla with over 650 participants from 33 countries. The aid includes supplies from countries like Mexico, China, Brazil, and Italy, as well as contributions from non-governmental groups. Cuba's economy has been strained by 5 years of profound crisis, compounded by the paralysis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and U.S. sanctions. The recent energy embargo imposed by President Donald Trump has exacerbated the situation, leading to transportation shortages and reduced working hours. Activist Diego Avila, who disembarked from the ship, highlighted the solidarity gesture as a response to the economic warfare against Cuba. He emphasized that while the aid is a small step, it symbolizes support for the Cuban revolution in the face of international pressure. As more ships are expected to arrive in the coming days, Cuba continues to grapple with the immediate consequences of its ongoing economic and political challenges. The international community is closely watching the situation, with some leaders warning of a potential humanitarian crisis in Cuba.